So in the relational stage, what's happening is they have all their roles down where they can give and take. One can lead, the other one can follow, depending upon the skill level. They can problem solve. They've worked out all the nuances of getting along in an intimate relationship, and they don't catastrophize. Everything isn't an absolute catastrophe in a battle for power, separation. They've got a nice rhythm going. But the problem is they haven't really clicked into first love. You know, it's more functional, and they're still diluted by the early fantasy that other people get to stay at. Other people get to stay at safety and security, and that they might have married the other person, wrong person. That's the fantasy, that until you get the first love, you haven't gotten rid of yet. So the relational relationship in many times works. Like I say, many times if I get a couple there, therapy stops because they don't really have, or a lot of us haven't understood how to get them to first love. So that's been the fun for me, is trying to invoke these state experiences in couples that have that nice solid platform. And it does lay breadcrumbs for them that there's a deeper experience to be had that we'll get into as we go along.
Oh,
Is this here, Heidi?
Yeah. That sounds good.
That's good. That's good. And it'd be great to know how you entice them to move to that next
them
stage.
And us.
Oh, we don't do that.
You're one of my experimental couples.
We're happily guinea pigs, no problem.
So this is how we do it. So the goal is to develop the intimate we space. And how we're going to do it is by prolonging moments in the method of resonance and shared feeling. And the shared feeling is going to come from an external source initially, in order to create what some people talk metaphysically about, the vibrational field that we're trying to internalize. So the how is, we find moments that are poignant, that have resonance, and I decide ahead of time with my partner that I'm going to hold eye contact during those moments for 10 to 30 seconds. And we're looking for those moments, those emotionally laden moments that we can experience together. Perhaps when we're watching a movie, listening or dancing to music that are filled with joy, love, intimacy, sexual intimacy, sadness, change, loss, separation, transition. There's so many moments of those life that we feel deeply into.
Anger. Anger.
Well,
shared anger. No, the wrong end of the spectrum. Sorry.
No, I think if I interrupt you, when I'm angry with you, I think it would be good when we could look into our eyes in that moment instead of me staying in the anger. What would you say?
Well, I would be a little afraid. That's an interesting concept, Heidi. I haven't thought about it. Working on anger, and for most couples, given how quick it deteriorates. I mean, sometimes one of the ways, believe it or not, I create a safe environment for couples is I drop into my blue levels and I won't let them battle, because then it's unsafe. So I get my chair and whip and threaten to put somebody in the waiting room if they can't control themselves, because it gets very serious among couples. So anger, I'm going to have to think about. Although you raised a very interesting discussion there.
Yeah, it's not that I whip kick him or something, but when it's something he's forgotten again and something like this, and I get angry and I express it, and I'm really sure that it is in first dear expression, really blaming. So instead of him getting then angry, we could, you can also get angry, but when we notice it, and we do notice it, that we could exercise this thing. But we didn't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
I really need to think that. It is a very interesting idea in terms of this experience.
Yeah.
So here are the instructions. And number 1 and 2 is really where couples need to do the entry point. It's probably going to take 6 months to really develop it before we go on to the remaining 5 of them. So here it is. We look into each other's eyes with long eye contact for 10 to 30 seconds. And once we stabilize that moment and we calm down all the upper right, the visceral, the bodily experiences, so we can relax into it, we breathe into that moment. We soften our eyes in order to really feel it with them. We feel them resonating, which is getting into number 2. We feel beyond our own feelings and into the resonating field between us in that moment. And you can see by doing this over and over again, where we're conscious of that moment, trying to develop that connection. It's not something idealized. It's something that an experience we're having between us, even though it's externally derived. And I'm not sure if I said enough about that. So one of the easiest ways to do it is for couples that have children. And, our experiences with our children, they have to be hardwired. I remember asking a colleague, do we ever stop worrying about them? And probably not, because it probably, is built into, our survival instincts and everything. But it's easy source in order to get those poignant feelings. So some moment where the child's struggling and perhaps they have triumph, and that mixture of joy and sadness it invokes, and that is so ripe to develop that resonance with. So we're holding that, and we're witnessing that moment together, calming down the viscera, trusting each other in that moment, and then trying to feel the resonance between us. So that's why we're doing the external sources initially as a way of developing those pathways emotionally between us.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make sense?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So to move on in this and to get to the next steps, and remember, 1 to 2 is probably going to take 6 months of practice in doing it, because there's going to be moments, you only do it for 10 seconds and you look away. Other times you're going to really hang in there for the 30 seconds. 30 seconds is a long time. I know we've done in Buddhist seminars I've attended, I've done up to an hour with Christine. And a lot of people can't handle that. But it's very interesting what happens when we do it. So number 3, we notice how you can become aware of the commonality of feelings you share with countless others not there at this moment. And again, I'm going to go back to the parenting one, is that in that moment of both joy and sadness, there's a commonality of so many other people have been there and have felt that before. And we just want to begin to locate that commonality, because what we're doing in that moment is planting the seeds of what Barbara Max Hubbard calls non-local awareness, non-local consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you seed that. And I'll have more to say about that as we get further down on this structure of development.
Mm-hmm.
So number 4, we begin to notice how it becomes easier to enter this we space. The visceral settles down. You automatically search out that eye contact because it does deepen the relationship between us. It feels so intimate to allow connection at that moment. And it begins to create even the sacred you can feel in that moment. So it becomes easier. We begin to notice it. Number 5, we begin to initiate this we space with only a look, or what I call a kiss with an intention. Last night I kissed Christine goodnight, and she said, wow, that one really had intention. So it's not just a peck. It's not a perfunctory thing. It's embodying that we connection, that deeper space, because now as we go along in this continuum, it's becoming familiar. This first love state experience is becoming really familiar, and we begin to invoke it, just with a kiss. And you can see how the skill is really developing now, in my hypothetical scenario here, is that we can feel it. It's just really having a clear guideline of how we do it. So I'm wondering your reaction. People that are familiar with integral and state experiences and whatnot, do you think this is doable for people that are reasonably stable in their relationship?
Oh, yeah. I think so, yeah.
But there needs a reasonable confidence between the people. That if it is a relationship which has the cracks, it can help, I imagine, but it is more difficult probably, because these initial states probably are more difficult, because when you are already, I think back on past relationship, when you are already in sort of halfway breakup, and then look the other into the eyes, you lose your illusion of power, So, I think it must be at least the commitment that we want to stay together, and then I think it can work.
There's got to be a significant degree of goodwill.
Yeah.
They can't be, in great conflict and start.
I imagine. No. They must be, as you said before, willing both to do that.
Right. There has to be that stability, because, the beauty is that the overexposure shows the potential of connection. It's just that so much goes through the bandwidth that can't handle it. But the exciting part is it isn't that safety and security in all the fantasies in the movies, that it's really this level of connection that, remember, it becomes non-local. It becomes, the other in the communal experiences we always talk about in integral. And the potential for love is just enormous. And that's why I'm excited about this, is to try to have some pathway into this is what I'm finding. So if I can move on, make sure I find this one.
Yeah.
Shoot. So this one, number 6. Notice how these feelings are neither temporally, that's time, or geographically, location limited. They're always accessible. So neither temporally or geographically limited. So what do we mean by this? Is when you can begin to invoke this easily, it doesn't even require your spouse to be there. It's like the memory of it becomes so persistent, you begin to enter that space alone. And it's not just in intimate couples. It's also in, like when I visit the great cathedrals in Europe, and this is metaphysical, of course, and the part of me is trained as scientific training always goes construct validity, proof. But I understand that, of course, to get a little integral here, I understand that tension between modernism and postmodernism is integral, maintaining both. But when I'm in those great cathedrals, you can feel the hundreds of years that people were at their higher self. And I love it. I just open up into it and I bask myself in it and just take it all in. And that's how it persists. That's it not being neither temporally, because obviously some of these cathedrals aren't even used anymore. Some are hundreds and hundreds of years old. And for some reason, some unknown resonance seems to persist. And on the dark side, in Rome, being in the Colosseum, I remember just an awful feeling in there of, what happened there, and, how people, the total disregard for humanity, and how profane it was, that it was just used for entertainment. I just couldn't shake that feeling. So whatever that is, I mean, the scientific part of me wants to find some sort of construct proof of it, but it seems to be true. Have you been in those locations?
Sure.
Yeah, and I was thinking about the power places. We have a mountain not far away where for centuries or longer, it has always been a power place. Monte Cimini here with these huge mountains, with these huge, not mountains, rocks, and think places, or I don't know if you call them like this, around the rocks, organized round. And so when you come there and the high trees, that it's sort of, you sort of feel something. I don't know what it is, but it is something. And the same.
At best, there's a residue of what has gone before.
Yeah. But even if you don't know it, that they have passed by always, the people who came from north to south often had their sacred places, You feel that. And in many churches you feel it. And in some churches you feel also that the darkness when there was, some other things going on. And often, even without knowing, you can feel these things. It's
yeah. And so you can see what I'm doing is in couples, I'm tracking the same state experiences. And later on, I'm going to show you a grid because I'm changing the language from the common ones to something that shows more of the collective state experience. Because I'm finding the individual ones, although informative, I want to do some of the nuance. But to finish this, if I can go on, so I think we've already alluded to this, number 7. So we noticed how the we space persists even when not in eye contact. And then number 8, we notice how the we space persists even when we're separated. So by way of realistic expectation in the box here, when number 1 and 8 are fully developed, 1 through 8 is fully developed, our center of gravity stays at first love. But there's so few couples that can do this. Christine and I find that we can much more easily float up into it and that it persists, but we spend most of our time in the relational level. And again, there's no statistics on this, and whether it's normal and what the distribution is, what the potential is, these are all future questions. But at least mapping out some of this in order to ask these questions down the road is realistic. And then in order for people out there to practice this, it's more realistic to expect times when you float up to first love, as we're saying, from the relational stage rather than prematurely expect most of your time to be there. And so just not to develop all the frustrations associated with that. I thought that's useful to say that.